Hello, everyone. Welcome to Center for Conscious Kids Conscious Living podcast series. We're here today at Specially Produce Network, live in San Diego. And I'm here with my colleague, Annie Kalakar of the Brain Integration Institute. Welcome, Annie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Ashley. Last time we were here together, we were announcing an upcoming book that we actually produced and we got it out. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and just tell everybody real quickly that it's been a success and it's psychic self-care.
Yeah.
And you can find it by going to our Facebook page, Psychic Self-Care for Highly Sensitive People. And Ashley and I can be found there during the week answering questions for people and refining your knowledge of how to take better care of yourself. And you can find it on our website by looking at the article Psychic Care, and there's a link inside of that. So anything you want to add to that, Ashley?
No, thank you. And it is a beautiful book. We love it, and it's got huge insight for everyone to enjoy. So, Annie, we were going to talk today and focus our conversation today on family constellations. It's an amazing concept. You helped me see the amazing journeys that we can take on our ancestral boat ride through time and space, backwards through our ancestors, and even looking forward towards our descendants, and looking at levels of energetic, conflictual problems, all different levels of issues and blockages maybe to healing and resituating family order. Would you share with us a little bit more about what family constellation work is about?
I'll do my best. It's so experiential that I would think I would probably have to talk for 4 hours to try and, capture the essence of what goes on. I will say this. One of the most fundamental concepts behind family constellation therapy is that it's to bring healing to a family. And what I mean by healing, I mean balance, restoring balance. And that's why we talk about the orders of love. Love is accounting for everyone in a family. It has no choice but to do that. And I think when we look at it from our, fifth dimensional golden age experience, we're looking at it from unity consciousness. We're looking at it through oneness. And we're seeing that whatever discord is in the family needs healing. And, the short answer is it needs forgiveness. And on another level, it needs to be surrendered to in a sort of a sweet, exquisite sort of way for the soul. And family constellation work really helps people be in a better order in their family system and also be in their rightful place. So the orders of love are about restoring people, individuals, and the collective in the family to their rightful place. So when we look at constellations, we ask questions like, who's lost to the system? And one of the first places that I go looking for who's lost is where were the miscarriages? Because when I work with a client or I work with their children, I want to know, was anybody born after a death? It's very important. Then I look at who's been cast out, maybe a first spouse, perhaps a brother or a sister has been cast out. We look for who's been forgotten, who was lost in that manner. And what I mean by that is sometimes you have an aunt that has mental illness and gets put in an institution and no one visits her. Her name is never spoken. She's never remembered. until a little one comes along in the family and senses that someone is missing and they've been forgotten, and they try to account for them by replicating the pain and suffering of that particular family member. And then we have those that are denied their rightful place in the family system. And denial by anyone in the family who's big enough, we call them great ones in the family. So that would be like grandparents or parents. When there is that kind of denial, perhaps somebody brought shame to the family. Often this is merely a judgment, it's a perception by someone in the family that someone's not good enough to belong to the family. And so there's this actual movement afoot to deny them their rightful place. So we see this when someone is homosexual, someone's a prostitute, a drug addict, a drug dealer, shameful types of behaviors. And what happens is even people that get written out of the will, right? They've been denied their rightful inheritance. So when little ones come into the family, they often get entangled with trying to see those who have been lost, cast out, or denied their rightful place in the family system. And they seek to account for these family members by replicating their pain and suffering. So when we do constellation work, we're looking to bring healing to the family so that it goes backwards up the lineage and then comes down through the lineage so that future descendants do not have to get entangled or enmeshed or embroiled with the pain in the family.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I thought I would bring up a couple examples of stories because I think people like stories more than anything, and they do teach better than I could. But I want to talk about some interesting stuff here today. At least I hope it's interesting for people. I've worked with a number of families who have done IVF, and this is what I call creating pregnancy through very modern practices. And 50 years ago, this was not available. And so there's all these different things that can come up as a result of doing in vitro fertilization or artificial insemination, although not so much with the artificial insemination, more with the IVF, because multitudes of embryos are created. So one of the things that I have encountered is this idea of the orders of love, meaning who's firstborn or who came first in the family. And when there are multitudes of embryos, the order is lost, what I would call the natural order. And sometimes, not always, this has some effect on the children who are born, especially twins.
Mm-hmm.
The one that comes out first is called the firstborn. And there's nothing wrong with that designation. It's quite logical. But I encountered a situation where within these twins, one knew that they were older. And even though they weren't firstborn, they knew that they were created first. They knew somehow that they were the firstborn, and this came out in the constellation. And so little minor things can become, like the grain of sand inside the oyster becomes the pearl. Well, sometimes it can just become a bigger and bigger aggravation to the little oyster instead of a great gift. So one day I did this constellation, and it was for a doctor, and she had her sibling there and some other family members. And in the middle of the constellation, after she learned that she did not come first because I had found a miscarriage that her mother had had, who she had never told anyone about it. This woman stopped everything and starts going, I knew it. I knew it. I knew I wasn't firstborn. I knew I wasn't supposed to be first. And she was so excited that the burden of being first was lifted from her. It had a huge effect for her to now know that she was not, in fact, the first child of her mother's. And so this shifted a lot of responsibility and weight. And again, a lot of this is like imagined weight. But oftentimes, firstborns do have a lot of pressure put on them. So that was one of those little stories that I remembered for today, because we're talking about order and rank. I had another mom who had multiple abortions, multiple marriages, and her own two grown children were really struggling. And so when I set them up in the family constellation format in the field, um, the I use recipe cards. So I'm putting down cards and I said, anybody else? And all of a sudden it was like, yes, 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 yes. And I looked at my client and I said, okay, how many pregnancies did you have? And she covered her mouth like she was like so taken aback by this discovery of all the ones that wanted to be accounted for in her family. And when she and I stepped into the experiences of her two children, they wept with relief at being able to see the others accounted for in the family system. So, with extreme honor and respect and love, we had each child that didn't make it say hello to the two that did. And also, um, we exchanged very unique healing sentences with each one of the children that were represented in the field. And then we did something that I call roll call. And we had the first one say, I'm number one. And the second one said, I'm number two, and so on down, so that her own children could state their place in the rank, in which they were created. And then we went and looked for missing half siblings that are on the children's father side, and we found a couple. So this brought enormous healing and relief, actually, to both of the adult children of this woman. And she saw them begin to settle down and not try to be all over the place. They became more focused and more driven in their experience. Back to you, Ashley.
Yeah. Wow. What a profound magnitude of knowing that order in the family presents healing. And I think a lot of us don't notice, or it goes unnoticed for years, if not decades, maybe even generations, where the unaccounted for ones don't get accounted for. And in these children and even adult children, they can feel this sense of longing or yearning or emptiness that hadn't been accounted for. And I think many times as parents or adults, we're not sure how to address those issues. We're not sure, do we talk about it? Will it cause more grief? Will it create more upset? Will it provide? I think everyone wants to announce the truth and to let all of that out. But at the same time, how do you present it? And how do you do it in such a way that it presents healing for everyone in being authentic and truthful about, yeah, that one didn't make it, or this one did that, or this one did that, or what, all the different ways in which we have family deaths, have family tragedies in different situations where we do have lost ones. And I appreciate that you're sharing with everyone this profound way of healing, of bringing that family back to wholeness and oneness.
It's really important. I cannot emphasize this enough. When I said that I go looking for miscarriages that happened or abortions that happened before my client was born, I really look at that and consider it profoundly, because the unspoken understanding is that I took life when you couldn't. I took life after your loss. You were not able to be here in this family. And so, on the soul level, the child that's born after a miscarriage often has the hardest time being present. They have near death experiences. They're trying to be in the grave with illness or risky behavior. Sometimes I find that the sibling that didn't make it is attached to the one who came next. And it's simply that the sibling seeks to be part of the family experience and they're not ready to move on. And it makes it twice as hard for the one who did make it, so the child that was born next. And it gets incrementally more difficult when we have two losses, two miscarriages, three miscarriages before a child is finally born to a family. And as I explained to one client who had this just unbelievable anxiety and fear, and a lot of it came up when she had her own pregnancy. I said, let's stop and take a moment and step into your mother's experience, who had three miscarriages. With every pregnancy, her worry increased. She would probably rub her belly and wonder, oh, please make it, don't die, right? And imagine the child that is growing under the conditions of worry and fear. And I said, you have like a learned behavior built in because of how your mom spent probably every day of her pregnancy wondering if you were going to make it, or if you were going to be the fourth one that she lost. And there was difficulty at times for this mother bonding with this child, because she had so much fear and worry about loss in her own family that she feared getting attached to her child in case that child died, because she had already experienced so much loss.
Yeah.
So constellations really seek to heal the grief that the parents have between them over the loss of their child. We say that the first pregnancy is the culmination of the hopes and the dreams of the couple. In olden days, it would have been, upon their marriage, they brought everything together. And nowadays, with our modern relationships, we don't always have marriage, but we do have primary relationships and committed relationships. So the same energies go into the fruition of that love. And when it dies, the relationship takes a big hit. And if the couple does not grieve together, then it creates imbalance. And so constellations can help heal each of the members of the family when there is a lost one. I do have another story here where I noticed one of the children that I work with was deeply entangled with lost siblings that had come before her. And when I went to set up the lost ones, the mom was very disassociated from her pain of the loss and couldn't remember how many abortions she had had. And so I stepped into each one and I brought them into the field, and she got to acknowledge the father of the child, each child. And with enormous courage and bravery, and I got to tell you, this woman grew so much that night through her courage to acknowledge that this one is yours. to the representative for the biological father, whom she formerly didn't even want to mention his name, wanted to cut him out of the picture, wanted to pretend she never ever knew him, because there was so much pain and suffering that went on there. But the little one was seeing all the pain and suffering, was seeing the the first relationship that the mom had had where all these abortions had taken place. And the little girl was not thriving. She had numerous health issues and was not a happy child. She was not thriving. So after we brought a better order to her family, her health improved as evidenced by all of her blood work, which was really fascinating to see as a measure of peace, um, how much her health improved through just looking at blood work. And I'm sure, Ashley, you see this a lot of times.
Yeah, I sure do.
So I wanted to also bring up the idea that family constellation work helps with infertility. Ashley and I recently worked on a case that was quite fascinating. Um, Both the mom and the dad had their own stories of unconscious pain and suffering going on. Mom had lost children, and dad had suppressed 53% of his sperm. And when we checked in, I don't know if you remember this, Ashley, but all the viable sperm that the man had suppressed were female chromosome wired sperm. And so it was completely unconscious, and it was related to soul family issues. And so, that was just a fascinating finding that illustrates for me some of the hidden factors that we don't know are going on, but family constellation work can certainly bring it up and look at it from an entirely new and fresh perspective. Why am I not getting pregnant? So there's so much more that goes on in the background, as I like to say, hidden forces. But when we look at constellations in general, we look at why are we entangled with the pain and the suffering of our ancestors? And it's all born out of love and loyalty. So when I look at couples who are about to get married, want to get married, or are looking for a spouse, I always say, okay, let's really look at your suffering obligations of love. Let's look deeper at who you're attracted to and why. Because a suffering obligation of love is guaranteed to attract a partner who's going to replicate the pain and suffering in your family, not give you what you want. Okay, this is a very important aspect here. It's like if you're going to bake a cake, I always say start with really fresh organic ingredients, because you incrementally make just a better product. So the same would go for creating a marriage and a family. You really want to know what's driving your experience. You want to look at who am I entangled with in the family? Is it mom? Is it dad? Are there marriages that I'm entangled with that I'm trying to fix their pain and suffering? And the reason we want to ask ourselves that question is so that we are sovereign, that we're free from those soul lessons that don't belong to us. Yes, they're in our family. Yes, we want to heal them. Yes, we want our mom or dad to have it better so that we can have it better, but also so that our descendants can have it better and future generations. So love is what drives us to go turn on the family soul radio station and go listening for stories of pain. And we did this very brilliantly, I say, in the past. Okay. Whenever there's a problem in a family, children, through innocence and love and magical thinking, And yes, Ashley, I will let all of our listeners know right here, right now, that not a lot of the children of today are doing this, but certainly all the adults that are listening today, we've done our fair share of this.
Yes.
We are entangled with the past, and it is being replicated on a daily basis through our families and through our work experience, because people replicate their family experience that hasn't um, they haven't come to terms with, they haven't healed it at work. You
Yes.
know, they go find the perfect job that has a boss just like their mom or just like their dad. They have coworkers who take unconsciously the role of siblings, and
That's for sure.
yeah, it just replicates the pain to a whole nother level. And people who are self-employed often um, recreate their family within their business, and they hire people unconsciously that account for all the family members. So what I like to do when I work with people is say, let's work on clearing your side and your partner's side, and that way you're coming to the table completely free of entanglements where love and marriage are concerned,
Yeah.
so that you know that your attraction to your partner is 100% you, and it's not being driven by a suffering obligation of love. And this trickles down into when a couple has children, how they parent. And I know that being a parent myself, I had to look very much at my own parents' style of parenting in order to see how I was going to be a better parent. And I had to look at the ways in which I was replicating similar patterns. And constellation work really does help with that as well, because out of love or loyalty, we can emulate the styles of our parents, because we feel on some level that if we don't, we're being disloyal. We're being a traitor to the family system. This is how it was always done. And some of those patterns are outdated because they're rooted in consciousness that is of a lower frequency. And so when you're trying to be this, utopian parent, um, doing everything you can to be a conscious parent, and then you find these old patterns and these old ways that come up and interfere with your goals as being a conscious parent, we can look at the family structure and where are you embroiled with mom's thinking or grandmother's thinking. How much of it came through your genetics? Epigenetics is a very popular topic right now because, for example, grandmother's depression is your depression. It flipped genetic switches in your mom, which got handed down to you. And so Ashley and I are always looking at these types of factors that are within people and helping to clear those. So family constellation work can do things like that. It depends on what you want. So, Ashley, I've been talking long enough. What do you got to say?
Well, thank you. I mean, thank you for that sharing because I think it is. It's um, I'm not sure. We may consider like marriage counseling, right, before going into a marriage and looking at it from a mental aspect, like what are my beliefs and what is his beliefs and how do I get together and how do we create that? And even in same-sex marriages and other kinds of marriages that we do or come together even without a piece of paper or something, but we come together and all types of relationships and it can move far beyond mental. It can move into the emotional, physical, and spiritual realms, which you were talking about. And I think what's really so important is we as souls have bigger radars than we may think or understand. And when we're as we just talked about in the podcast before about the disorganized brain, When we're programmed or wired to look at what's wrong, even from a soul perspective, we could look at what's wrong up the family tree or down the family tree, or I even call the soul family tree, all kinds of family trees we have. And how we look at that, and if we're finding a level of discordance, conflict, or problem, you're right. Many times we come pre-wired with that availability and opportunity and spiritual presence of love. And through love, we don't want to see pain and suffering. Through love, we don't want to see discordance or problems. And you're right, we can take on those problems saying, I'm strong, I can do this, I can heal this, I can move through it. And a lot of times we get into our physical bodies, we get into the physical world, and we start getting involved in that, and we lose track of where we came from a soul perspective and wanting to heal some of the family pain. So working on family constellation work also helps us remember, awaken that within inside of ourselves about what it is we wanted to fix. I see it commonly with working with kids. They come in with certain patterns, either as babies or toddlers or young children, and you're like, where is this coming from? It's strange, it's different, it's not anything that has to do with our family right here or anything that they've been exposed to. A lot of times when that's a cardinal sign that something else is going on beyond what we see in our immediate environment. And I think a lot of times that can drive experiences all throughout our lifetime and can limit our opportunity to experience health and wellness. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I also want to add that the work, once it clears the um, the conflict within the family line, it's cleared forever, right? No one else is going to get entangled with it. And I've had some of the most consciously aware grandparents come to me and say, I want to do this work. I want to clear up my shit so that my grandkids don't get entangled with me. That is visionary. That is wisdom that is so deep and profound that I just applaud them because they know, hey, we don't need future generations trying to fix my pain and suffering. That's mine. I own that. And so they love the opportunity to get into the field and help heal their family. It's a real pay it forward, right? They're clearing the future path so that the ones that come later have a greater chance of happiness.
Yeah.
And that is really the gist of family constellation work. It's really about bringing the healing to the family so that they can have greater happiness, so they can be at peace with where they're at in the family system, and that the love is flowing when the orders of love are improved and they're more in alignment, shall we say.
Yeah.
And that's the goal, just to clear the energetic blockages, which we know from our work as advanced energy healers that what we're doing is we're clearing the low frequency emotional conflicts that have been held in place energetically in the family soul.
Yeah.
And when those get cleared, everybody just seems to relax and a lot of the anxiety just peels off. We have children that become healthy, parents that settle in and really become focused, committed, responsible. And, the separation gets healed. And the conflicts, as they get healed, there's this beautiful trickle-down effect that everyone feels more intimacy in the family. And those that have been, previously labeled the black sheep, or those who moved away, who disappeared on purpose, people usually hear from them again. It's quite fascinating.
Well,
And it's all about
absolutely.
that unity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we see children, from families that wanted to have a child, they get pregnant. We see families that had difficulty in discerning or understand that unfolds, and that it really, the energy, we call it the energy opens, but from what other people see is they see that their outcomes change. What it is they desire broadens and opens, and sometimes the outcomes that they wanted are even broader than they ever could imagine could happen. So many forms of healing happens when we do let go of these family, I would say, energetic stuck situations or pain and suffering, and that the love does flow. And when the love flows, we manifest and create the world we choose to, the world we want to, and the world we intend to. Thank you so much, Annie, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And you can reach Annie online at the Brain Integration Institute. And there you can schedule a session with her. You can see many articles, blogs, and podcasts to talk about many of these issues and support you through your health and healing process. And we want to thank you for joining us today. Everyone, have an absolutely beautiful day, and please keep in touch with us. You can reach us at thebrainintegrationinstitute.com.